Okay.
It was in Philadelphia.
We good to go?
Okay, we're good. All right, so I'll start with you.
Okay.
All right. At the press conference, you were kind of critical of the media coverage, especially with the national media outlets not paying attention to this case. Why don't you think it got the attention it deserved?
You know, it's very troubling that there wasn't more of a national outcry when you have serial rapists with a badge victimizing woman after woman in a local community. If that was any other ethnic group or any other socio-economic class, people would say, hold on, we gotta say something about this, we gotta do something about this. But, you know, it was troubling with this notion that this group of 13 black women were somehow unrapeable. It was almost as if no circumstances you could present would say that they had been violated because this notion that they were not as valuable or their lives didn't matter as much, their experiences didn't matter as much. And so that really, really got to me, especially when Mr. Muhammad called talking about his daughter and saying, you know, he raped my daughter and they're gonna sweep it under the rug.
And that really feeds into one of my questions because you mentioned having the phone call with her father, and that kind of shifted everything for you. It became personal because you also are a father.
Right. And it really did. And he said something I thought was profound. He said, if this guy get off, I don't know what I might do. And I thought that was deep because I thought as a father, we all try to be moral and civil and principled. But when you talk about your little girl being violated and by the people who are supposed to protect and serve them, and then Chelsea, they do nothing, you know, you say, well, what do I do to make my daughter know that she's valuable and that her life is worth something too? And so it really got personal to me. And that's when I started saying, calling the national media and the national organization saying, why aren't you all saying anything about this?
Are you critical of the Oklahoma City Police Department?
And to an extent, because you say, how could this continue to happen and nobody know about it? I mean, how could he continue, as Mr. Muhammad said, to turn off his GPS, run people warrants and stuff, and nothing happens? Nobody is suspicious why he keep doing this with these black women, and then there's no follow-up reports or anything.
All right, and tell me about the civil lawsuit and what your clients are seeking.
Well, what we're seeking is full justice, and that will have to be defined by them and the city leaders here in Oklahoma City. It really comes down to about this whole notion that's going all out over America, that Black Lives Matter, and now everybody's saying Black women lives matter too here. And so the leadership has to say this conduct was reprehensible. And we got to speak to this. We got to do something about this because the whole world is watching.
And many are saying that justice prevailed here, but that, like we've seen over and over again, is not always the case. But how does this verdict help to create a positive momentum moving forward? It is a victory.
Yep.
It does bring hope, but it's one case.
It's one case, and two things on that. We were celebrating not so much today for the courtroom victory, and that was important, but more we was celebrating the courage of these women to come forward. The statistics bear out there are dozens and dozens of women who are raped every day, and nobody says a word about it. And it just becomes one of the things that torment them inside and causes them all kind of psychological problems. But these women provide an example for others to say, no matter what the circumstance. Can you imagine how daunting it is to come out and say the police raped you when you got to go tell that to the police and expect them to do right by you, a woman of color in a poor community? I mean, that's a daunting scenario, but they did it. They had the courage to do it. And so that's what we're celebrating, their courage. And as it relates to the courtroom victory, I think it was important because this was just a terrible case, and they had the evidence there to prove the case. But it was very significant that an all-white jury, based on the evidence, gave justice to these 13 black women. And that tells you there's hope for America, there's hope for society, and a better hope for our children.
Would we be here right now if it had been 13 white women?
No, I think had it been 13 white women, he would have been convicted day one. It would have never gotten to 13 white women because the moment one white woman was raped and said something, it would have been a national outcry like nobody could ever imagine. If a white woman said, I got raped by a police officer, and then a second white woman said it, there would be every national outlet here on day one in Oklahoma City saying to the chief and the mayor, you all have to do something about this. And that is the thing that has disturbed many, many people. Now you have celebrities commenting about it and so forth. When you think of the Kerry Washingtons of the world and the Jada Pinkett Smith saying, you know, our lives matter too. Black women lives matter. And you all in Oklahoma City, you all over America, you all have to recognize. We love our wives, our daughters, our mothers, our grandmothers. Miss Liggins was a grandmother. And she even tried to offer some, you know, rationale that I'm a grandmother, don't do this to me. And you heard her testimony. She said he had no concern about that. If that would have been a white grandmother, do you think it would have been this little attention given to this case?
No, no. And even some of the women with OKC Artists for Justice, they talked about how even some of the feminism groups had stayed away from them because they weren't the ideal victims. The case wasn't sexy, wasn't a bunch of Stepford wives. It was the underprivileged, those that often don't have a voice in America. And then you're trying to speak about something that is so horrific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The least to be, and they just said, it don't matter.
Yeah, and there was a bit of a delay. It wasn't until obviously Jane Liggins came out that the ball started rolling. But the first couple women, I guess they had a hard time gathering evidence.
Yeah, well.
I mean, that has how I have understood the delay. That she was the first legitimate woman that they could actually kind of like go forward with.
You know, it's interesting though, and we'll see what the investigations bear out. Mm-hmm. When people are complaining about a cop raping people, you find out who that is. You know, you just don't take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, and not find more and more victims. Maybe it just becomes, hey, you're done right now. Yeah. Or at least you're not patrolling anymore. We're going to put you behind a desk.
Exactly.
All right, we'll interview you.
Okay.